Yeah, exactly. All right, guys, we'll get started. And if people jump in while we're going, then great. But we're going to get started. Welcome, everybody. Today, we are going to be sharing about how to set yourself up for success when you are looking to buy a home. And so even if you're not ready today, these are good things to learn for the future, so that as interest rates change and as things come down and as you become more experienced, and you have savings built up and stuff like these are all the steps that you can implement so that you'll be ready like next year or the year after. This is really kind of like geared towards first-time buyers, so that it's just how you know how to prepare yourself when you get ready to do this. Because a lot of times Caden and I will see buyers come in and they don't really know what to do. And so then we kind of like go to work at that moment, but then they might already have a house that they want, that they saw, and so they're a little bit behind schedule. And so it's nice when you can kind of plan this ahead of time, know the things to put into place, so that when you do decide to get into home ownership, like you already have everything ready to go. So that's what this webinar is all about. If you guys haven't met Caden yet, Caden's one of my business partners. He helps everybody get their loans prepped, helps people get mortgages. Obviously, I help people with the real estate side of things and helping people shop and helping people look in areas that fit their needs and find them the right properties that fit their needs. So we'll jump into things here. I'm going to share my screen and let's see here. I am going to open up. This is a worksheet that I wanted to. Do you guys see that YouTube live stream?
We're big time.
Yeah, man. It's delayed, so I don't want to see it because it's going to distract me. So we are going to go over the 4 aspects of buying a home. And we're going to kind of go through these 4 steps. We'll explain them. Cade and I will go back and forth. And then at the end, we'll have a Q&A. So if you guys have questions about things, we'll be happy to expound on anything as we go. This is a small group. So what I love about it is feel free to just jump in, unmute yourself, ask a question, raise a hand, because we want to teach you guys and share with you guys how all of this works so that you're in the know. So the first aspect of buying a home is your income. And when you get approved for a loan, when you get a mortgage, it's based on 50% of your debt to income is the maximum that they will loan you. So what that means is if you make your gross income, you want to break that down into, okay, what's your gross income per year? Then you break that down into per month. Then that is going to be your gross income. You're going to get 50% of that. That is going to be your debt to income. So if you have a car payment and say it's $400 a month, you got to deduct that out of the total. I'm going to get my example page because I think that'll show this a little bit. So say, for example, you make $5,000 a month, then you're going to have $2,500 a month that you could get qualified for a loan. But you just got to make sure, if you got a car payment of $400, well, now you just reduce that monthly payment for a house down to $2,100 a month. And this is really super simplifying it, but I just want to give you there's a lot of other things that factor into this, but I just want to give you the overall, like when you're setting a goal and you want to know, okay, I want to get a house and I want to pay, $2,000 a month for the mortgage payment. This is going to give you kind of a way to figure out what is your ability to get a loan. So that's the first step, income. So Caden, do you have anything you want to add to that as far as details that would be good for them to know as they're prepared?
Of course, I always have something to say. So like he was saying, if your gross income's $5,000, at the most, a lender will be able to take half of that income. And then from there, we start deducting debts. So what I tell people is that your debts are worth twice as much as your income when it comes to buying a home. Meaning, right, like we can only use half your income, but we're going to use 100% of those debts against you when qualifying you for a home. So that 50% marks 2,500, but say if your only debt's a $500 car payment, you're now only qualified for a $2,000 a month monthly payment. So if there's anything to take from when it comes to income, is having less debt is more important than having more income. Obviously, more income is great and always have a job that makes more income. But when it comes to qualifying for a home, there's people who can make less money than others and qualify for more of a home.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll give a personal example. Like I went to qualify for a house and I make pretty good money. And they were like, hey, you know what? It'd be nice if you could pay off one of these cars and qualify you for way more of a house. And so that's what the power of not having as much debt is just going to allow you to get something bigger because it's all wrapped up into one investment, basically. And it's more important to invest in property than it is a car because a property is an appreciating asset. Like it's going to keep growing in value and a car just keeps going down in value. So it's nice if you can pay off a car and you have more money to put it towards a house.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Next up is,
I guess real quick before we switch,
yeah.
I guess in keeping with the trend of this class of preparing for 2023, would just be, hey, if you had it on the books that I want to own a home by June, reach out to a loan officer, reach out to someone who could point you in the right direction of, okay, so you have these debts. It might make sense to try and pay these off. So you're ready to go when the time comes. So in preparation for just communicating with people and understanding which debts you need to pay off if you need to or not. So you totally know where you'll be sitting for qualifying for a home.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Good. All right. Next up, the second aspect is savings. And there's two main things when you're buying a home that you're going to save for.
Mm-hmm.
The first one is called closing costs. Those are costs that you are going to have to pay when it comes to taxes and HOA transfer fees and title companies and loan costs. And there's, realtor commissions that are all baked into this closing cost thing that sellers and buyers, pay. So you're going to have to save for closing costs. Usually that's right here. It's that 1% of a purchase price. So if the house costs 400,000, it's typically going to be around 4,000, give or take. It's just an estimate. What we usually do is we run those numbers for our clients when we get close and everything, so they know beforehand exactly what they're going to be. But that's just to give you an estimate. So you'd have to save up $4,000 for a $400,000 house. And then their second thing that you have to save for is your down payment. And so down payment, it depends on which type of loan you're doing, but typically we'll just say in this scenario, a lot of people go with a FHA loan when they're first time home buyers because the benefit is you have a very small down payment. You can get 3% or 3.5% down instead of in conventional loans. Sometimes you have to go higher, up to like 5%, or some people choose to do 10 or 20%. But basically the least expensive, the easiest way to get into a property is usually an FHA loan. The only one cheaper than that is a VA. And that's because the government helps military personnel not have any down payment at all. So they get to benefit from being in military. You get to have 0 down payment. So that's the only one better than FHA. So if you figure a 3% of a $400,000 house, then you're going to be at $12,000 down payment. So altogether, you'd have this basically $16,000 that you'd have to save sounds like a lot, but it's crazy to me is for 4%, you're able to get a $400,000 house. So like the ability for you to get something that is worth so much money, and yet you only have to come up with 4% of that is like the best investment that we know of. That's why Kate and I believe so much in real estate. It's like you're not going to be able to buy anything that is worth that much for that little down. So it's just kind of a way to think about it. Like, man, I only have to pay $16,000 to have something that's worth $400,000. And it keeps growing year over year. Like each year, historically speaking, you can grow in value in a home 4% to 6% per year. So what it does is something that's called compounding value. So say we grow by $10,000 and now it's worth 410,000 next year, then you're basically going to, the next year, that $410,000, then it grows the percentage by that amount. So it just keeps kind of growing and snowballing, if that makes sense. So all that to say, that's what you need to save up. We got our income and now we got our savings. Like you're going to have to put aside money in savings, pack it away. And we'll give you a couple strategies at the end on how to do that as well. So Caden, anything else you want to add to the savings portion?
Yeah, I did send you a infographic pretty late. Could you potentially pull it up? I was just going to show the minimums down for each loan program.
Was it through text or email?
Email. So you got to show everyone your inbox, hide everything.
Oops, that's my calendar, not my calendar.
No, but 100%. Like I was, regardless of whatever loan program you go with, or go with that green one if you can.
Okay.
There you go.
Here, I'm gonna download both of these and then we'll have them.
It's nice to just have a savings. Say, there are options to do down payment assistance, and then you could potentially have the seller cover closing costs. Technically, meaning you can walk into a home for $0 out of pocket. But I would still tell someone to probably have, if they can, $10,000 saved up at least to own a home. Things just come up. Being a homeowner is different than being a renter. You have to handle your own problems if they come up. And sometimes that comes with paying, a financial stress to fix it. Here are the four major loan programs, being conventional, FHA, VA, and USDA. On conventional, you can go down to 3%, but you typically have to get approval, certain credit score mixed with just the overall file, and it's kind of judged by Fannie Mae. It's not like there's an underwriter in a back room and then lending office that says yes or no. And then also you can do some programs based on income limits. So if you make 80% or less of the area median income, you can access a 3% down payment as well. Which is super nice. FHA 3.5%, little higher, but the best part about FHA is super lenient. You're able to also get up to 4 units with 3.5% down, which is amazing. That's probably the best thing about FHA, and I'm sure we'll get into that probably in a different webinar. It's called house hacking, but it's amazing. And then we have VA and USDA. And VA obviously is for the military. Anyone who has served or is serving, you get eligibility and get up to, it's a 0% down loan. It's my favorite loan. And then there's USDA for anyone here in the Phoenix, Maricopa area. You really have to get outside of the valley to access this USDA loan. There's a really small portion of Maricopa, the city, that you can get it. But for the most part, it's a rural loan. That you can get 0% down as well, which is also amazing, but it comes with some income limits. But that's the quick rundown on minimum down payments. I'm sure we can share this at the end and you can look it over it as well.
Yeah. USDA is, like Caden said, is great because it's 0% down, but it's kind of like, it depends on how much income you make. So people that are more established, they usually make too much money to take advantage of it, and not everybody wants to live very far outside of the city boundaries and stuff like that. So it's kind of wasn't it geared more towards to help like farmers and like people like that back in the beginning, Caden?
Yeah, I mean, you see it as, I don't know the full history, but it's definitely like a rural agricultural loan.
Yeah.
It's tough in Phoenix. I mean, because for the most part, it's a city. There's not much of a rural aspect out. You have to like leave the area. I mean, I can't remember off the top of my head, but I want to say even Queen Creek's involved, and you would consider that kind of out there. But it's much easier to try and get a USDA loan in Washington and Oregon.
Okay.
Less city, and just more rural land that have access to. I've pre-approved a bunch of people, but it just has never come to fruition. They always end up going FHA or something else.
Got it. Yeah. It's like a specific map that you have to go by. So it's hard
Yeah, and
to
I can
find
always
it.
share that link as well. It's through the USDA website.
Okay. All right.
But yeah, that's what
So
I have. That's what I have
awesome.
on down payment.
Yeah. And guys, we can share this in the chat. Let me, when we go to Q&A and stuff, I'll put these in the chat so you guys can download them from there if you want. All right, next up is your credit score. This is like the third thing that you're going to need to prep yourself. When you're getting a loan, it is best to have a credit score of 640 and above. So that is kind of like where you can get in, you can get started. If you can make it more than that, the higher your credit score is, the higher it improves your buying power. And what I mean by that is when you get a loan, you're going to have an interest rate of whatever the going rate is of the market. And so you heard us talking, Kate and I, at the beginning, like talking about the Fed. And without going into tons of detail, our government sets the interest rates, and it's based on inflation, and it's based on basically jobs, how people have jobs and how affordability is. And so then banks and lenders, they all run off of what the Fed says in general of where interest rates are, of how you can borrow money. So basically right now, we've been going up in interest because we have higher inflation and because things are like becoming less affordable. And so they're trying to like hedge that and bring it down. And so they do that by bringing those interest rates up so that the economy kind of slows down, just to give you a quick economic lesson. So all that to say, if you have a higher credit score, then you will be able to get a lower interest rate when you get a loan. So someone that has a very high credit score, say they're an 800, maybe they could get like a 5.5% interest rate. And then someone who has a 640 credit score, they may, get a 6.25%. And I'm totally making these up. I'm just giving you an example. Like Caden could probably speak more towards actual numbers if you wanted, but really, to be honest, it's a case by case basis where there's so many factors we look at, as you're seeing, like your income, we're looking at your credit score, like we're looking at your debt, like, so all of these things all factor into how much you can afford month to month. And a lot of times your interest rate, basically the higher your interest rate is, the more your payment's going to be for the same amount of dollar amount. I don't know if I'm making that clear enough, but basically
Just easier and cheaper for the most part.
yeah, it's easier and cheaper the higher your credit score is.
Yeah.
Is a great way to put it. So it's going to make you be able to pay to buy more house, like have a bigger loan amount because your credit score is better. Caden, what do you have to add to that?
Of course I do. I was just making sure you're done.
Yeah, I'm done.
No, so for this 640 number is really it is pretty accurate for a conventional loan and down payment assistance. A lot of down payment assistance programs want to see a 640 score just to show some ability. What is a credit score? It shows your ability to repay a loan. That's basically what it is, and you get a score put on you. Good behavior gets a higher score. That's all it means. But they want to see a 640 or more, meaning that you're able to take on be able to get extra money funded to you to be able to purchase a home. But yeah, this number is very accurate for conventional. But when it comes to FHA, you can actually go as low as 580, but the same standard is there as well. The lower your score, it may just be a little more difficult. You may not get the same rate that someone at 700 for FHA loan would do or would get. And each program has their minimums. Don't have an infographic on that, but 620 for conventional, 580 for FHA. There's technically no limit on VA, but you want to at least see 580. Anything below gets tough. And then USDA is 620. So that's the quick rundown on that. But do whatever you can to just keep good credit behavior, because it ends up really, really helping out on a home. One of the biggest loans you'll ever take on. I hope.
And I'll give you guys a little extra bonus tip. I teach this to my kids. You can apply it if you haven't yet, but basically as soon as you get out of high school and you're in college, it's usually a good idea to get yourself your first credit card. And I say this like with caution, because I don't want you racking a bunch of stuff up on your credit card. I advise to pay it off every month. So you just use it like you would money out of your checking account. You don't ever go out of those bounds, and then you use your checking account basically to pay off the card every month, so that it just stays, it doesn't just build and go out of control. But what it's going to do is it's going to start building your credit more, because you're using it and paying it off and using it and paying it off. And so that helps you build credit. The other things that help you build credit is getting a car loan. Even if it's a small loan, and even if you have a parent co-sign with you, it just helps build credit in those first couple of years, so that by the time you're done with college, or by the time you've had a few years in a career that you started, you have built that up to a point to where now you have a great credit score. They see a history of you always making your payments, and that's really what you're doing to build credit. So there's a couple of tips with that.
Yeah.
And then the fourth step, the final step, is that they're going to need in order to get the loan processed is your job history, your work history. And so I put in here this little how long till I do 2 years of work history. This is just for you guys if you wanted to fill it in, but basically you need to have 2 years of work history. They want to see consistency and proof that you make this amount of money for this period of time. It doesn't have to be in the same job, but it just has to be a similar, like, okay, they've made this much for the first year, they made this much for the second year. Like, they just want to see consistency and want to see proof. So it doesn't matter whether it was a W-2 job, like you worked for a company, or whether you work independently. I know some people like me, like I work on 100% commissions. So I'm self-employed. I don't, have a company that's giving me a paycheck. That's, I take taxes out and all these things. Like, I got to manage all that stuff myself. So I have to have 2 years of a full history to give a lender, because it's a little bit more information that they need from me. Whereas if you worked for, say, Target, or you worked for a company that gives you a paycheck every week or every 2 weeks, then they can just look at paycheck stubs and they're like, okay, they've been paid this for the past 6 months. They're probably going to be paid the same exact thing for the next 6 months or more. So Kaden, you can speak into that a little bit more, but the main thing is, like, you're going to have a history of working.
Yeah. So especially when it comes to self-employed, even on my side of things where, it can be very commission driven, as lenders want to see a 2-year history of that to show that you can do it for 2 years and what a 2-year average looks like. So it's always a big thing when talking to real estate agents that want to purchase a home. Need the 2 years, 2 years tax returns, not even like a June 2022 to June 2024. We'd have to wait for that second year of tax returns, full year of tax returns to come back around. couple of things like you had mentioned, it doesn't have to be in the same line of work. If you're a W-2 employee making an hourly wage and you know, over the course of 2 years have switched a job maybe once, probably at the most twice, but show you're making more income each time, that's not a problem. You're showing the same kind of pay and you're making more of it. So that's what we want to see. We like to see the trend. And when I say we, I mean the guidelines that are the loans backed by our government. And then one little nuance where you don't necessarily need 2 years of work history is if you were in college. I don't know if anyone is in that situation, but if you're going to college, get your degree, and then you get a job associated with the degree you got, you can use your last 2 years of school history as work history. So you're able to use that. And then if you have a offer letter coming out of college for a new job, that is also what we could use. So that is one of the few times you would need you can use less than 2 year work history. Consistent
Good.
2 year work history. Yeah. But
Perfect.
yeah, I mean, there's always this stigma of, oh, I haven't been on my exact job for 2 years, and it's just not the case.
One thing I also want to share with you guys, I'm just going to share one of these. This is a case study, and I just want to give it as an example to show you what is possible, because sometimes people need a visual on what they can do if they have friends, if they have family, if they even have parents that want to partner with them in getting a house. So this is like a case study where I've changed the names to protect the innocent. No, Riley and Jennifer, like they're good friends, they're roommates. They were going to college together. They decided, hey, you know what? Like, we know what it's like to be roommates. We know what it's like to live together. Why don't we just save up money together and qualify for a house together? So I call it a team up. You could do that with a roommate, with a cousin, with a family member. My only caveat is you want to do this with someone that you trust, because I recommend, if you're going to do this, you got to hang there for 2 years in order to have it be your primary residence. And so that it's going to protect you from getting like what they call capital gains tax. Like, you want to like invest, let the house appreciate, let it build some equity, and then you guys can each take that money later and split it in half and then go and invest it into your own houses later. But it gives you a way to get into the game. Basically, you're basically team up with somebody. I've offered this to my oldest daughter, and I bet you if you were to ask your parent or a grandparent that has maybe some chunk of savings, they might be willing to do this. But I offered my daughter, my oldest, like, hey, if you want to get a house, I'd be willing to split the cost with you. And kind of like, I'm investing in this property with her. It means she only has to save up half of the down payment and half of the costs associated with it. I have her live there for 2 years. And then we can split those profits when she decided to sell after a couple of years, because we both invested in it. So that's another way to team up. But what you're doing is you're taking all those costs we talked about before, your down payment and your closing costs, and you're just splitting them in half. So if you had to save up $12,000 for a down payment, well, now you're going to only have to save up 6,000. So it's a way to maybe do it a little bit sooner if you have someone who, you know, is interested in growing, you know, investment wealth, basically. And a side benefit, if it was a parent or a grandparent that partners with you, they're already going to have good credit a lot of the time. So it kind of helps you establish credit and be able to do a little bit more. Caden, correct me if I'm wrong on that, because I think you do go off of
We go off the lowest.
You do go off the lowest credit. Okay, so
Well, you can. I was going to
correct
touch
me.
on this for credit though. What's called an authorized user. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of that, but if you're like, hey, I just really want to bring up my credit score faster than I could on my own, you could always ask a well-established person, whether parent, grandparent, or whatever, who has a great credit history, And if you go as an authorized user on that, a certain credit card,
Yeah.
you not only get to get the benefits of them just paying off their payment on time, but you get the whole history of that card under your credit as well,
Okay.
which really boosts, because history is a big portion of how credit scores are factored. So nice little
Okay.
credit score hack.
Little hack. Nice. So main thing is you got a team up. It's kind of a little house hack. And then I mentioned this all the time, but I think I said it earlier, homes grow on an average 4 to 6% in value every year. So if you bought a house that was 350,000, if you just wait 2 years, most likely that house is going to be worth around 390,000. So then when you go to sell it, you're going to be able to take that money, split it in half, and guess what? Now you have your down payment. Each person has a down payment to put into their own place and have their own place all by themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the power of real estate. So you just would take their $40,000 in equity, and then they go put it into their own property. So that's kind of like the little case study, a house hack of how you guys could do things. So, basically, I guess, I don't know if you have anything else to add to that, Caden, but I just that's our little presentation. We wanted to kind of open up the floor for Q&A, because I know that that's a lot of information for like 30 minutes straight that we're just like talking. So thank you guys for being here, and we really appreciate you. But if you've got questions, like what are some things that we can answer for you that you want to learn more about?
What in Arizona, what loan programs, like a DPA loan program, do we have? Because I know in California they have like CalHAFA, and then I've heard of like Chinoa and Chafa loans. But what DPA loan programs do we have in Arizona?
So yeah, I can do Chinoa as well, and then the one that's across the state is AZ Home Plus. Yeah, there's a lot of different options. You can get down payment anywhere between 3 to 5%, and you can have options of you either pay on it or you don't per month. Ultimately, you are eventually paying that money back, whether you're doing it monthly or at the time of buying, or at the time of selling or refinancing. But AZ Home Plus is one. There's one specific to Maricopa County. And then, God, I am forgetting the last. There's one that's kind of associated to AZ Home Plus, but I always lean on Home Plus. It tends to be the best option for like a statewide plan.
Okay, sweet.
Yeah, and I can track out some info to get to you, Cameron.
For everybody else, can you explain what DPA is?
Yeah. So down payment assistance is where I'll actually just use myself. I bought my first home in Washington and then moved here. The program is very similar up there. I actually learned it's a sister program to AZ Home Plus. So basically what we did is we didn't have enough money. We had enough money for a down payment, but not enough for closing costs. But we knew we wanted to get into a home. So we got approved for down payment assistance. We used an FHA loan. It was 3.5%. And we got 4% assistance, meaning we got some to go towards closing costs as well. How that process was set up is we didn't have to pay on it monthly. I believe it was $13,000, something like that it would sit in basically escrow, basically money we would owe back at the time of selling or refinancing. And then when we sold our home in Washington and moved down here, you pay that money back to the state. The pro is you're able to access money and you're able to get into a home sooner than if you were to try and save. The con is typically your monthly payment is a little higher than if you were to fund the down payment yourself. So that's like the quick synopsis, but the ability to get into a home for potentially just closing costs, potentially just $5,000 to $10,000, whatever that number is. You'll know for the most part, if you hold onto the home, it always makes sense to do that instead of waiting and trying to save for a down payment.
So does that make sense to you guys? Do you have any questions about that? Down payment assistance?
And you guys better yell at me if you're like, I'm not following a damn word you're saying.
Anybody else? Anybody else have any other questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that I thought recently is it's good to have like a good down payment, but should you also have money set aside for furniture? Or is it better to get like a furnished house already?
It's a good question. Yes. Typically you are going to need to have some other savings set aside for furniture, for mini blinds, for curtains, for all of those types of things. So yeah, I mean, depending on where you're at in life, you might have to get everything because you haven't left home yet. Some people, they've already like moved into a house and they've been renting for a little bit, so they have a few items, but to outfit a whole house is different than just a room that you had in dorm at college or whatever, you know. So yeah, for sure, you're gonna need to save up some things. For me, when I got my first house, like yeah, we had to save up for everything. It required a lot of hand-me-downs from grandparents and things like couches they didn't want anymore and they were ugly, and we're like, we'll take them. Um,
Silverware.
yeah, silverware, plates, like go to garage sales and find whatever you can, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, you learn how to save money for all those things, but then how to be a little bit thrifty as well.
Mhm. Yeah, I don't know if there's always a set number on it. It just depends. Just depends on how people live. I think that number is
Yeah.
somewhere between $5,000 and $10,000 at a minimum. But that's something I always try to talk to people about because, yeah, you could fund a down payment, not have to pay for closing costs, but if you're left with like $1,000 or $2,000 left over in savings, that's where it becomes scary as a homeowner.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. One thing that I wanted to add, like a little bonus, and that is we were talking a little bit about it because you're talking about assistance. One tactic to give you guys like how to find a deal or how to get a better deal when you're shopping and when you actually go to do this. One tactic would be to shop in December, January, and February. Maybe even a little bit of November too. But I say that because right now, a lot of people are just they're in holiday mode. Like ever since Thanksgiving, they've just been like hanging out with family. They're taking vacation days. They're kind of like not working as heavily. And so what happens in real estate is a lot of times homes will sit on the market for a little bit longer. So right now, I'm seeing homes that are 60 days on the market, 90 days on the market, 100 days on the market. Those are houses that you can get deals on because they've been sitting for longer. So you're able to not only get like down payment assistance programs and things like that, but you can also work with a realtor. And what we can do is when homes have been on the market, the sellers are motivated more to sell their house, right? So we can negotiate for you on your behalf and say, hey, look, my clients are approved for this, but we really need to get a better interest rate. And so what we can do is called seller concessions or seller credits. And we ask the seller, we're like, hey, we will offer you your full price that you want, but will you help us with credits, with concessions? And this will help us either pay for our closing costs or it will help us buy down that interest rate. So there's a thing that you can do where they call it buying down points, but we can negotiate that the seller actually pays. I've seen like $10,000. The seller credits, instead of dropping their price, they credit you as a buyer $10,000 that you can use towards your closing costs, or you can use it towards making it from like 6% interest down to 5% interest. Like you can use it in different ways that it's allowed in the transaction. So that's a creative way to get a deal in this specific market and this specific time, because we're in that like December, January, February. It's not as active with people buying. So houses, anything that's over, 60 to 90 days, those sellers start getting nervous, like, oh, am I going to sell this? Like, what's going on? And so you get a lot more negotiating power as a buyer to make a deal.
Yeah, and I think when a lot of people hear that they'd be getting a deal, they think of the purchase price. But the real deal and money and savings when it comes to purchasing a home is actually in that monthly payment. So if you can get the seller to pay for some sort of a rate buy down or just make your life easier month to month, that's where you really win as a home buyer.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I put in the chat so you guys could see, I put in those examples of the PDFs that I was using in the presentation. So you'll see the 4 steps to buying a home. You can download that if you want. You'll see that case study that I shared. You can download that. And then I put in Caden's first time, or which one? The minimum down payments. And then I do have, let's see here.
I did throw in that first time home buyer as well.
Did you? Okay, perfect.
Yeah. What would be like the pre-approval package that I would send out to anyone who just got pre-approved?
Yeah.
Just kind of talks on everything, all the way to home inspections, credit scores, things to look out for, documents needed. It's always cool to have that and just as something to look at when the time comes. So
yeah,
20 pages. Don't go through it all at once, but enjoy having it. Yeah.
Yeah, download that stuff, like save it. It'll just be something you can look through later. But yeah, it's all tools for you guys to use so that when you get ready to go, like you'll have everything you need to have. And then obviously you guys have me, you have Caden. If you got any questions, you can always reach out to us and we'll help you. But I guess lastly, like any other last questions? I didn't want to cut anybody off with the getting the deal thing, but any questions on how any of that deal stuff works, or any other final questions that you guys had?
Do you have
No?
any kind of property like in specific that you'd recommend to a first-time home buyer? Like anything in specific so that it's not too much of a challenge to get in the beginning?
I would say honestly, I mean, it sounds simple, but it's don't become house poor, meaning buy something that fits your budget. And I would say, you don't want to be like at your maximum of that 50%. We talked about that debt to income. Like you don't want to be at your maximum every month. A comfortable thing would be like to give yourself a little buffer so that you're not like paying all your money towards this mortgage and barely making your bills.
Mhm.
So Caden and I will probably help clients with that. Like we usually go off of, that monthly budget because you have all these other expenses too, like power and water and sewer. Like you have all these other things associated with it. So you just don't want to become house poor is what I call it. Like, and then area wise, like it's really preferential to people where they want to live. But I always recommend, like, if someone wants it, I can get them the data on certain parts of town. So in our market that we're in right now in Arizona, there's certain parts of Phoenix and outlying metro areas that we can like look at the values of the homes and see how much they appreciate versus other areas. So I would just pick an area that is known that it's going to keep growing and keep gaining in value because of businesses and companies coming in and job growth and things like that. And if there's like nice areas, guess what? Like that place will always grow in value because there's nice restaurants and shopping and businesses moving into that area. So if you want to get down to that level, just get a realtor on your side that can get you all that data and you can make decisions on, what do you like the best? Some people want to be by a dog park. Some people want to be close to hiking. So it just really depends on your day-to-day, like stuff that you like to do and and what you want to have.
And then to add to that, I think I don't know if you're about to say something, Cameron. I'm sorry. I've learned if there's anything when it comes to this industry is it's not one size fits all. There's someone who's willing, and that I know I can understand that they are willing to take on projects. So I think maybe part of the question is fixer upper versus turnkey. It just depends on that person.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times when people want to fixer upper, they're thinking about a lower monthly payment or a lower price point, but they don't understand everything that's going to come with it, plus all the extra money they have to put in. So it's just understanding, here are the pros and cons of the fixer upper, here are the pros and cons of the turnkey. Yeah, you're probably going to pay more for the turnkey, but might be the lack of stress that you want. And then do you want to pay more per month, or do you want to pay more out of pocket to fund all these repairs? So I think that's something that people always forget about. It's like, oh, I can get a house for $50,000 cheaper. And I'm like, well, you're going to spend $10,000 versus like $200 or $300 more a month. So just depends on what you want to do.
Yeah. And you got to have the expertise to do it, or hire someone to do it. So
Also spendy. Yes.
It's also spendy. Right now we have like, oh, I don't know, the general contractors are like way four times more expensive than they used to be, just even 5 years ago, just because it's in such demand. So unless you already know how to like remodel an entire kitchen, it'll be expensive.
YouTube is your friend, though. YouTube is your friend.
Yeah, for sure. Don't be scared of it, but it might take a time,
Mhm.
and you just got to be okay with your house being dusty and kind of torn apart a little bit while you do projects. Well, awesome.
Yeah.
I think that is what we have. Again, thank you guys for joining us. I hope you found value in it. And if there's any resources, anything that you need at all, feel free to reach out to us. And you got all of our social media stuff and ways to reach us, and we'd be happy to help.
Absolutely. And we can always, if you didn't download the documents, or if we come up with new ones, we can always email them out to you. Resources and whatnot.
Cool beans.
Yeah.
Cool beans. All right, guys. Have a wonderful, wonderful week. Thank you, everybody, for your time.
And
Thank
happy
you.
holidays, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, happy
Thank you.
holidays.